Hi there, I'm Dani Henderson. Welcome back to my beautiful channel. My guest today is a wonderful, iconic woman in my eyes and many of yours. Her name is Gloria Masters, and we are going to get into her new book, which is extremely important, and it's called Keeping Kids Safe. And is there never a more urgent and pressing thing for us to be doing on this planet as we're moving into all kinds of turbulent waters and recovering from past turbulent waters. Now, I'm going to give the viewers out there an extremely strong warning, a graphic warning. You're going to hear some horrific, awful, unthinkable, unimaginable atrocities that happened to this lady when she was a little girl, a baby girl to a little girl. And please do not have any children. Please do not be selfish. Have them out the room or watch this later or listen to it later, because we are not going to hold back the things that happened to Gloria Masters. We're going to share in brief and then move into what she's done with the horrific violent traumas in her life. Gloria Masters, my darling friend in New Zealand, how are you, angel face?
Oh, hello, Dani. How wonderful to see you again.
You too, you beautiful beauty, you beauteous beauty. All right, my love, let's begin with the background of your childhood, if we may.
Of course. So my heart sinks as I say it, Dani. I was born into a family where child sex trafficking was the norm, and my father began abusing me from the minute he could, and then leased me to friends and got his extended family involved. And one of the biggest shocks and sadness for me was my grandmother training me at the age of 5 to become the best sex worker I could be. So up until I was 16 years of age, I was trafficked. They made a lot of money out of me, and their faces would light up with glee when they would see the money coming their way. My grandmother got paid a commission to train me. So it was pretty evil stuff. And I think, alongside that, Dani, I starred in over 100 child sexual abuse materials, videos. And they're in the States, the police believe today. And as well as that, I had forced abortions on me from the time between about 11 and 16. And I was also leased out of a nightclub. So I was hidden away in the top floor, chained to a bed at times, so men and women could pay to abuse me. So really, I didn't really have an adult that cared about me, and my mother was such a wounded narcissist. She didn't really care at all, and so it was dealer's choice. Men and women could do what they wished, and as much as they wished, depending on what they were prepared to pay. So that was my childhood, which isn't a childhood.
It's unthinkable to normal thinking, regular thinking humans with love in their hearts, their own souls, that anybody would want to touch, harm the body of a little child, a baby, a newborn, a toddler, a 5-year-old, etc. And yet that was your living existence, and your grandmother trained you in all the horrific, horrible ways, and you had a mother that didn't care either way, wasn't even compos mentis, and they did it for the money. And the fact that even today, the beautiful woman, mature woman that you now are, it's incredible that you've recovered so much in the healing journey that you've done. But the fact that there are many child sex porn movies out there in the world of you as a little girl with other children and other adults, and that you were leased, your father leased you out. He rented your little body out to men and women and other horrific beings to be abused in that terrible way. It's just absolutely, it's just unthinkable. And leasing you out on the top floor of a nightclub that people could pay to do these things. And you think, who in their right mind? But they're not of right mind, they're of wrong mind, they're of evil. Their biggest energy within them is dark and evil and needs feeding in that dark way. And so you're so brave to shine a light, and you've done so much work, and we're going to get into that. May we move, even though it's really horrific, to the gang initiations, because a lot of people don't realize or even know that some of the gangs across the world, whatever gang type you want to name it, they are made to do dreadful things to people, to animals, and to children. And who would imagine, being a tough gang member, you have to abuse or maybe kill or snuff out the life of a child, which does happen, and they film it, then they use that as blackmail, or they just want to see if the person can prove that they're man enough, which of course they are not man enough. It doesn't take, there's nothing manly about murdering, raping, or harming a little girl or a little boy, as we know. But could you please give us some of that detail for context? Sorry.
No, that's fine, Dani. So, yeah, look, it remains to this day a very vivid memory for me. I was 11, I may have been 12, but I was taken to a gang because as I got older and my mother's disinterest grew even more, my father could basically do what he wanted when he wanted, and he got paid more if people could have me for longer periods of time. So I got taken to gang headquarters one weekend. I won't name the gang, because there were only 3 gangs in New Zealand at the time, but I got taken there, and it was for an initiation ceremony, which means pretty much as you've described, but a way for a young person to become blooded into the gang was to prove themselves. And so I was the choice, and what that meant was I was taken in, I was stripped naked, I was spread-eagled and tied onto the block, and the block is either a table or a big board, wooden board, and each part, or each 4 corners, so both feet and both hands are tied. And I was then gang raped, but he had first go, and because he had to prove something, I was beaten pretty badly. And in fact, I was beaten and raped over those hours and over that day and throughout the night into the next morning. When my father came back and got me, I was unconscious, but he woke me up, and I heard him say to the gang leader, "You want to be careful what you do to a mate. She won't look as good for you next time." So that would remain one of the worst experiences that I had, but it also showed the lack of connection, I guess, from a father, a normal loving father, to his beautiful child. And yeah,
You know, it brings the thought up that, you know, the damage done to your teeny tiny body. You know, we hear about little child brides of 8 who are married off and sold to dirty old men, because anybody who finds anything sexual about a child is a filthy pedophile in my book, and I make no apology for that. But we hear about little girls across the world who, when the man takes them the night of the marriage, that they die because the penis penetrates through the, you know, the wall and harms the organs and little ones. It's just so horrific. And the same with little boys too, who are, you know, anally ruptured. And we hear so many horrific things. There was a movie in LA that was made. Oh my gosh, what was the name of it? And it was an athletic guy who was a stunt person. A lot of people have seen this film. I forget the name of it right now. So let me get into the shadows, I think. And he injured himself doing a stunt for a movie in Hollywood. So he goes to a woman who is known to be able to put bodies back together. And he's so amazed at her skill. She's very gentle, she's very loving. And he says to her, wow, like, how do you know how the human body works? How do you know how to heal, people? And she says, all of the trauma that children go through in Hollywood, in LA, in America, in that den, because there are dens all over the world, as we know. She said, who do you think puts them back together? Who do you think puts the pelvis back together? Now, to the people watching and listening, I do understand it's graphic, but don't look away, because this is happening. It has happened, and it will happen until every single scumbag that does these to our children, is taken and removed from this kind of action. The other thing that it lends thinking to is, as a little girl, if you had died on that particular night where you were gang raped and mauled and harmed and beaten unconscious and unrecognizable, you could then link into what some parents or adults have done and do. They would then say, well, they might have finished you off, or you would have been dead anyway. But then to eliminate any focus on them, they would say you'd gone missing. That is also how some children have not been found, because they've been...
and it brings to mind the Sound of Freedom movie, and one of the people that was involved in that does some talking about it now, and he said that they called it the Sound of Freedom because it was the sound of children laughing, and they hadn't heard that from the children that they were rescuing.
That gives me goosebumps.
Doesn't that just move you?
Yeah, because it is to me, one of the most joyous feelings and thoughts, and the audibles of children laughing. And it was the children that were taken to a party, and it was a sting operation that Tim Ballard and his team rolled out, and the children were going to be used in all kinds of horrific ways. And then the police came and arrested the traffickers, and then the sounds after were the children laughing and playing, and that's the sound of freedom, and it's just so beautiful. Yeah, such goosebumps from the angel. That's the angel frequency, and you truly are. I've told you this before. I truly do see you as a really prolific earth angel, and it isn't okay what happened to you, but you are. I put you up against, as I've also interviewed the two of you on my channel together, I see you and Kathy O'Brien, two of the most important voices on the planet when it comes to the rescue and the understanding of what children go through. And because you've both been forced into unthinkable worlds where we think there's this hierarchical good person thinking, the politics, senators, governors, heads of hospitals, heads of religion, heads of police, and yet there is ultimate corruption in all of those systems. And you two have both spoken out, written books, named names, especially Kathy O'Brien, naming presidents and senators and governors that harmed her in the CIA, for example. So I do hold the two of you up very, very much. Is there anything on the horror of your childhood that you feel we should share before we move on to your latest book?
I think what I would say is this: partly that what happened was I was so isolated and so alone, Dani, that unconsciously I had no choice but to go within, because I didn't have anything outside of me. And so that memoir on Angel's Wings was because that's how I felt. That's all I had. No one actually cared whether I lived or died. And so I did try and take my own life 3 times, and I just couldn't get it right, which, we're grateful for, aren't we? But I think I learned to go within, and I know as I get older and I become wiser as we do, that's the best advice I can give any survivor ever, is stop looking outside of yourself and go within, because that is where the answers lie. Yeah.
I know I said I wasn't going to do it. I'm trying not to, I do want to say that despite all the damage to your little body, you did actually go on to have children, just in case people are wondering about that, because there are lots of children that are never able to, to have their own children. And it's so sad to know that you tried to kill yourself 3 times, because for a person, a being, to be in that such a lost place and they really think that that is the only way out, it is to me just the saddest thing. But again, thank you for not doing that. Thank you for being here. Let's share your new book. Oh my God, your new book, Keeping Kids Safe, that just has only been out for 12 days and yet just won a massive award in New Zealand. Please share your beautiful work.
Okay. So it's Keeping Kids Safe. It's a roadmap for parents, teachers, and others. And Dani, the beauty of this, and what I'm so proud of, is that you can find this on gloriamasters.com and Amazon. But what I'm really proud of is that this book talks about what to do. It's practical. Yes, we all have stories. There's stories across the world of what survivors like me experience, and Kathy and others. But it's time now. It's time to do something about it, and that's what this is. So this is jam-packed. It's got practical tips for parents to teach their children. It's got tips on what to look for. It's got a section on child sexual abuse, because it isn't just a thing. There are many levels and layers to it. It goes through what grooming is, because grooming happens to not just children, Dani. There's 4 key areas. Did you know that? 1 is children, 2 are the parents, 3 is the community, and 4 is society. So people say to me, oh no, it's the children that get groomed. Yeah, but the bigger group is the parents and caregivers. Does that surprise you to hear that?
No.
So that's one aspect of the book is grooming. Another is online sexual abuse. You know, this has become such a big thing. We've got children as young as 8 in our country who are being targeted. They think they're on their little iPad or phone playing a game with another 8-year-old. No, they're not. There's a 39-year-old man behind that who's trying to groom them and get images of them and traffic them, either through meeting them or through using their images. So there's that. There's tools for parents. There's tools for children. And one is the hand signal I released in June. But also one is simply, and it's not a Gloria original, but it's a family choosing an emoji. So, for instance, your family might have chosen a flower. My family might have chosen the image of a puppy. And what the deal with the emoji is simply this. If your child or children are away from you and you get an image of that, stop what you're doing and get in the car and go and get them. That's it. No explanation needed, because you don't know who's watching their phone or anything. But the point is, they can then be rescued from the place they're staying at or the position that they're in. It's that simple. Other practical tips: buddy up. There are so many ways. If you've got a friend who's got children the same age and they're good friends, have a family group meeting with that family on rules within your house, and if you're not available as a parent, that they become available. There's so many little tips and tricks throughout the book. It's jam-packed. We've got teachers being able to recognise what a child looks like who's been abused. Regressed behaviour is huge. If a child starts chewing their nails that hadn't been, there's something going on. Highly anxious, highly vocal, out of control behavior, that child's signaling. There's a whole section actually on child sex trafficking. There's a section on impact on children. You know, we think that yes, children will tell us, no, they won't, but they'll show us. So I educate parents and adults how to read a child. Stop using this, turn that off, and start to read behavior, start to notice what a child shows us. Talking is an adult construct. It's not a child construct. And Dani, part of the gift I bring to the world with this is that I am an ex-child therapist. I am an ex-teacher of children. You know, I am a mum, and I'm also a survivor. So who else but me could write this? And so this should be in every school.
Yes.
This should be in every home. I've got a friend who works in the emergency department at our main hospital in Auckland, New Zealand. She took it into the emergency care team, and they're raving about it because they can look through, go to the section on what a child shows and think, oh my God, that's there, that's happening right in front of me. So look, I think if it's starting to win awards already, it's got some punch. So I don't want to rave on about how great I am, but to be fair, to be fair, I feel like I was really gifted with this. This wasn't the book I was writing this year, Dani. It was another book. But my angels came in and they kept saying, write this book, write this book, write this book, because the world needs it now, not next year, now.
It's so amazing.
So
it needs to be in every school. And I want to say to people out there, people are always saying, what can I do? What's my mission? How can I help? Buy 10 copies of this book. Take them to the local schools, the library, the hospital, the church. Distribute this beautiful life-saving literature, which literally is life-saving. You know, it's just so easy to do something like that when we're like, what can I do? How can I be part of the awakening? How can I help? How can I? Well, there's one very good idea there for you people out there right now.
And I'm so glad you say that, Dani, because I do find, and hello to your beautiful audience, I do find people like to ask that question, but very few actually do anything. So they like to do the talk.
They do the talk.
So, do you want to save the children?
Yeah.
Do you actually do something about it? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's time to have those conversations direct. We can't worry about offending. And I know after everything you've been through, that's not part of your, you know, we love the children, we protect the children, we do whatever we can, whatever it takes. And if we just feel like, well, just watch Gloria Masters and her new book and then scroll on or see what's on Netflix or get something out the fridge, then you are not engaged in the society that you are living in and part of. But if you want to make a shift, a change, release some good brain chemistry, take some action, one small action, then help. Distribute the book, buy the book, recommend it to your school board, take it to a teacher. You know, it doesn't matter if you're a grandparent or not. You know, you and I, similar age, we're in our kind of 50s, and there are many people that watch my channel in particular. You know, I mean, at the conference that we just did, they were in their 80s. They were like young 20s to 80s. I mean, it was a massive, broad spectrum, and sometimes grandparents are like, well, what can I do? And it breaks my heart how many grandparents aren't allowed to see their children, which to me is an absolute crime in itself, because a lot of children would be saved from harm if an arrogant mum or dad, whatever reason, they don't want the children to see the grandparents, maybe they've broken up or divorced, whatever, they make it a reason why the children have to miss out on the grandparents. But if they were open enough and honest enough, that then these people are good. Obviously some grandparents aren't. Your grandmother was one of the biggest monsters that ever walked the earth, of course, but it is not the majority of us, and we have to be sensible. a couple of other things I wanted to mention there in terms of watching out for. Now, as you know, also, I'm a therapist and I've worked with many, many children. And there was a family years ago worried about their son, very worried because he's very compassionate. The kids are 13, 14, 15, 11-year-old boys. Oh my God, they're so sensitive. Their friends become everything. They'll live and die for their friends from an early age as we go through. And all parents that are engaged with their kids, we know that that's part of their tribal identification of self, which is when the predators come. So this little boy, 14-year-old boy I was allowed to he was being targeted by the RAF, that Royal Air Force, which is the naval flight military in the UK. So just to hurry the story up, I was allowed to use my personal phone number and pretend it was his, because they knew he was being targeted. So I would get the messages, the texts from the recruiters. And I can't tell you the blackmailing, the teasing. And then this one time I said, basically, don't you dare ever contact this number again, or I will report you and your number and your unit to the police. And then a little message came back, and it was Lilo and Stitch. And it was Stitch going, the little, like crying, which would make a child trying to stand for themselves then again feel sorry. So the mental, emotional manipulation is very, very well harnessed psychologically, empathically in our children. So that's something to watch out for. The other thing is that a lot of people, they think that they assume that it's the patriarchal, it's the male, the masculine. When I know somebody who was in school and from 8 years old was abused and raped and touched even before he had sperm in his little tiny body, and was abused and groomed for years and years by a paedophile called Beth Marinello. Now, she might be in her 80s now, who cares? There are many other little boys that were harmed by this particular paedophile, and she would just take him in the back and mess with him. And of course, it can be exciting, and she'd tell him, you like this, but you like this. And so he would be very confused because, he was growing. And so that's some, again, of the manipulation tactics that, so if a child suddenly becomes very attached to a teacher, even though that's a sad thing to say, but we have to say it. We have to say it because, this man has been damaged forever. He's never, ever recovered from being molested at a young age. So the grooming starts young, and it starts in the classroom as well. One final thing before I come back to you that I think is ultimately helpful is, as we are taking back the power, the parents, the guardians of the children in the schools and the education, I say we demand, if we can't watch on camera, because again, that can attract the wrong kind of people watching our children in class, then we listen so we can log in on a parent or a school portal so we can hear what the teachers are teaching our children. This, to me, should be an absolute mandatory request across the world, because, again, teachers are grooming children in the transgender, in the LGBTQ, in the having compassion for this, where it's really socially and emotionally re-engineering them from their natural innate, or their natural, if they've been nurtured well, their natural nurture. What do you say to that?
Yeah, 100%. And as you're talking about schools, there is, and I've got it in the book, I gave a couple of examples, Dani, but 100%. There's this app called Saturn, Saturn. It's an app, and it's across schools in America. A lot of schools are adopting it. Do you know the real concern with that app is that you can log in and not have to prove your identity. So kids in schools can be messaged, they can reach out to other kids, they can reach out to who they think might be another kid but is actually a pedophile. There's nothing in place to keep these people away from this app, and this is being used in schools in the States as we speak.
Thank you so much for that.
So I think
it's
Saturn.
horror. It's an absolute horror. And again, you know, we look at the darkness that pervades in every single system of authority on the planet, bar none. And they're disguising the word Saturn, which is another word that we say for Satan, for darkness, and that there's no proof of identity, no double verification of, you know, protecting the child. So it's an open portal. It's another way that they feel like they have to access our children. So thank you for highlighting that filth so that parents can be made aware.
I also want to bring up as well, parents, grandparents, people who love the children in your lives. Stop making children touch adults. Stop making your child sit on Santa's knee. No.
Very, very powerful. Go ahead.
No. No more. What you don't realize is, although it may be a totally innocent Santa, or you think your child should kiss grandma goodbye, you've got to stop insisting that children ignore their instincts. If your child wants to, you shouldn't even have to say it. They will just naturally do it. If they don't, they won't. Stop using words and start noticing what your children are telling you. Please stop making them touch anyone. There's a little saying that went round on Facebook, Dani, and I'll think you'll love it, which is this. Instead of telling your children to be careful when Uncle Max visits, tell Uncle Max to stop fucking visiting.
Absolutely. Tell Uncle Max to fuck off. Oh my God. It's such a good point. I remember growing up in the 70s, and when all the, you know, the relatives came, having to line up, like in my 90, I was so terrified and vulnerable, and then kissing everyone, and it's awful, and it stays with you your whole life, which is why adults should be more aware of not making a child kiss them or hug them, you know, because they're grandma or auntie or whatever. But there's this thing that we force our children to be respectful and do as you're told, and you're right, it's wrong because it kills their power. They have no authority. We shouldn't worry if the child doesn't want to kiss Auntie friggin' Nellie. Oh, it will hurt her feelings. Well, that's not little Johnny's problem. That's Auntie Nellie's problem. You know, so it's an adult thing, not a kid thing, right?
100%. Because the thing is, guys, we've got to start letting children lead with how they feel. Instincts are so powerful, and they are their guide. And if you keep making them override that, like, they may not want to kiss grandma because she's got smelly breath, or they may not want to kiss Uncle Max because he's got whiskers and it hurts their butt. It may be that simple, but please let children trust their instinct and follow what they feel. Because as adults, when that hasn't been allowed to happen, our boundaries are all over the map. They are skewed and they're very, very hard to find. But equally, we need to keep our kids safe. Keeping kids safe, if not you, then who?
It's amazing. If not you, then who? Another area which is incredibly important, and I'm sure everything is in your book that we're discussing, of course, is recognizing. So I'll give a personal example. When I was 7 at school, I was a dysfunctional kid, was very clairvoyant, very sentient, saw things I never wanted to see in terms of spirituality or dark energy or that kind of thing. And so, but I was quite a pretty child, and there was a girl in my class. She was beautiful. She looked like Bambi. I used to think she looks like Bambi with the big brown eyes, and she wasn't the brightest child in the class. And children, we know that, we feel it. We're intuitive as children. And I was very protective of this little girl. And at lunchtimes, she would get selected to go into the headmaster's office with his wife, who looked like a man. And I always found that very peculiar, but all the children were very jealous of this little girl. I'm not going to say her name. And we thought she was very special, because why was Mr. Clark choosing this little girl to go into his office at lunchtime? Why not the rest of us? Until one day I was chosen. I was chosen. And it was this little girl that came to me and said, Mr. Clark wants to see you in his office. First of all, I was terrified because I was always getting in trouble. And it was the days when teachers could hit you and beat you and humiliate you and pull your skirt up and show your underwear, which happened to me with a fat old back called Mrs. Thompson. Many times she loved to see my terror. And so anyway, I went to the office. And they locked the door. That was my first signal because my mother raised me right. And they stood this little girl on the table on his desk, and he sat one side and his wife sat the other. There was no music, and they told her to dance. And as she's dancing, I realized they're looking up her skirt and at her knickers. That happened. And he looked at me, and I looked at him. And even though I was terrified of him and he was the headmaster and I had been chosen that day, I was chosen that day, I knew it was wrong. And so I looked at him a certain way and he said, get out my office. And I wanted to die. I was so humiliated, frightened, what's going to happen? But I got out that office and I knew that man was wrong and he was revered and he was awarded and he was loved. It's so interesting. I was talking to my dad last week. And I mentioned this to my dad. I was starting to say to my dad about this story. And he went, he was a pedophile. I'm like, oh my God, Dad, you knew? Like you knew? He's like, yeah, the blokes that were telling me a while ago. My dad's Scottish. They're telling me a while ago. I'm like, but you didn't know that when we were in school, me and my brothers. And he's like, no, I would have fucking laid him out, you know. But yeah, so it came out years later. Because again, people didn't talk about it in the 70s and maybe the 80s, you know, but it's so rampant because the people that did it have remained unchecked. And so now it's the time to do it. Can you explain to us the thinking behind the cover of Keeping Kids Safe, your new book, please?
I will if you ask me in that Scottish accent.
Gloria Masters, could you please explain the image on the book? Thank you so much.
Oh, you should be doing that as a part of your living, my darling. So this again, I to me, and I'm so grateful. I always want to make sure the covers are right on the books I produce because everything needs to be grabbed. To me, this cover was chosen, Dani, because it's an army. If you think it's an army of red and black. And the point is this: black is power. Well, red is power, but black is evil. But white is light. And so what I wanted to do was show that throughout all of that is a way through, which is what the roadmap does. So you start at the beginning with, I'm a parent or a teacher. I don't know what I'm looking at. I believe the stats are high, but what do? You start with where you're at and what you may or may not know, and you start to travel down to, might stop there, or conversely, you might start here thinking, well, I know what I'm talking about, and then end up at the end of the book and then go right back up. So there's no kind of right way. And what I've done throughout this is basically given people their own way, because this is your roadmap and it's my roadmap. And so at the end of each chapter, because you know me, I'm very, very cognitive, behavioral, practical, but I'm also quite creative. And I know there's a lot of information. So at the end of each chapter, I've got a checklist. It's got 10 to 12 items. You, as the reader, you tick whatever appeals to you in that list. And there are 10 checklists. At the end of the book, when you create your own roadmap, what you ticked off becomes part of your roadmap. So your roadmap is going to look different. You're going to create your own. But that's going to look different than the one I'll make. Isn't that beautiful?
So beautiful.
So what is for you, find you. And the other thing is, I wanted to make it as easy as possible for mums and dads. So, for instance, here's a checklist here. You can see how I've done it. And then immediately following your checklist There's a notes page, and it's on that notes page you can record any thoughts, or it might be ring mum about informing the school. We need to check on what the school are offering as guidelines. At the beginning of each section in the book, because it's a roadmap, and again, you know how creative I am, I've got a roadmap related image. So this one is traffic lights, because the chapter is tools for adults. So your traffic light means you're there now. You're now going to start building your toolkit using prevention tools. And the last quote in the book, this will get you, Ms. Henderson. Whose job is it to protect children, she asked. Not mine, said one. Not my problem, said another. The question then becomes, if not you, then who? By Gloria Masters.
Gloria Masters, beautiful. You're such a gift. When you first started your own healing journey, which is what we all need for our own sanity and survival on the planet, you wrote your memoir. Can you show us, if you have it there, and tell us a little bit about it, please?
Sure. And I realised I went completely down a rabbit hole, and you asked about the cover of the book. Did that answer your question, Dani?
It did. It did. And also, you know, you have the modern pin drops there as well.
Yes.
Like it's it's an image that really strikes in the heart of generations that will see it, different age ranges that will see it. It's so clever. It's so clever.
Thank you. I'd like to take all the credit, but you know, my angels came in. So this was the memoir, the first one. That was me at 11, looking down, surrounded by angel wings. My flight from trauma to grace. So that was that one. And again, that's, yeah, it's a horror story. Like, you wouldn't really want to read it, but if you want to read it, people, go for it. But it's pretty traumatic read. I'm sure it's going to be made into a film one day, or it should be, to be honest.
And again, you know, it basically is more detail of what we discussed at the beginning of your own personal childhood trauma in your words. And it's very cathartic, isn't it, to write down the horror that happens to us in life. And it starts that healing, because there are adults watching this who have suffered and gone through the very things you have. Less or worse, it's irrelevant. It's still trauma to the mind and can stunt the growth on levels of the adult and everyone. We can have all the compassion in the world we want for the children, and of course we do, but we also need to have compassion for ourselves, those of us that have experienced these things. Please, if the second book is there, could you show us and explain that as the workbook and therapy book for others?
This is the one that got you going last time, I think, the Flight Path to Healing. And again, I try to choose images that I think denote. So basically, this is for adult survivors, the beautiful ones watching. Hello, lovely, beautiful survivors. I believe you. And it's basically, it takes you through, immediately you board this plane or work with this flight path, you're given a boarding pass as a survivor. And the boarding pass is because you are a survivor. And then we end with a certificate, which is your passport, an image, and it's graded and certified to you for getting through this. In each section, you can start anywhere, as with the roadmap. You can start anywhere, pick any section you like, and it will speak to you. So it has a lot of healing modalities through it. It has what worked for me. Each chapter ends with a mantra, and these can be removed from the book and put up on the fridge. So it's just to affirm the survivor that you are, and give you a little more hope and a little more feeling of being less alone. You're part of something. So yeah, it's a whole flight path. So your destinations and your kind of travel itinerary are created through the modules you choose in this book, a little bit like your roadmap.
So important.
So those are the three.
Can you share your incredible organization for survivors?
Certainly. So I'm the CEO and founder of Handing the Shame Back. And handing the shame back is exactly what we do as survivors when we speak. When we talk about what happened to us, we are handing the shame back because it never belonged to us. So for survivors watching, I provide weekly interviews with adult other survivors across the world. I write thematic blogs and have a talking version of them once a month on a theme relevant to us. And then I do survivor tips once a week. And for partners or family members of survivors, I have tips for supporting the survivor in your life. So I had panel discussions as well. I'll be doing another one just before Christmas. And we do that because we know it can be a tricky time of year for survivors. Often these long holidays, Dani, are when the worst of the abuse occurred and people had more access.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just so important. And the work you've done and do in handing the shame back, you make these beautifully produced interviews with people, and you invite people to come on your channel and share their journey, to all have that mouthpiece, all come together, be the powerful child that they never were, because they didn't have a voice. And like you say, this time of year is particularly difficult, not only for survivors, but also for children that are going to be locked in, shut down with their abusers, and will never put a voice to it. One of the strongest things that I hear you say that I think is so unbelievably beautiful and powerful is, I believe you. I believe you. When someone says to you, this happened to me, and they've been ignored as children, that stays, that damages, that creates a program. But when someone like you is standing, this angelic being that you are, having gone all through that, serving the planet in the way that you do, and when you say that to someone, I believe you, there's a little healing right there in itself, isn't there?
Yes, and it's so beautiful you picked up on that, because at the end of every interview, I say genuinely, I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you. And for us as survivors, that's so powerful. And we've created a t-shirt that I get survivors reaching out across the world for, and they wear them, in court when they're taking their abuser to court, or when we do our global awareness walks. So it's free to join up, free to join the channel, or go to the website. All the social media platforms are Handing the Shame Back.
Handing the shame back. And as you say quite rightly, that when you talk about your abuse, anybody who finally has a voice, feeling safe enough and protected enough to speak about their abuse, they're getting rid of something that was never theirs. They did not one thing wrong. Not one thing wrong. There was a girl when she was 14 made pregnant by her father, and she was blamed, and she had the child, and they had terrible lives, terrible lives. And anyway, this pedo is dead now, which is great. And I remember knowing the people that were going to the funeral, and two of them were crying. I'm like, why are you crying over a pedophile? But they couldn't help it, because their generation dictated that we respect our elders, which we've come to learn that's not right. We don't have to respect our elders. Respect is earned no matter what age you are. You don't just automatically assert a child, a teenager, a baby, somebody younger than you. That's not the way. That's the way we were programmed. That's what we're giving back, because we are all no one above another. Your Handing the Shame Back organization is prolific, and I want you guys out there, you know, my channel is not very big. And those of you with bigger channels, or even my size, or even smaller, please have Gloria Masters on your channel. Again, those of you that say, what can I do? What can I do? You can have Gloria on your channel. You can help her promote. Imagine how many lives we touch by having these conversations. One person to hear you, Gloria, one person to get your book, one person to start their healing, one parent that gets the book, Keeping Kids Safe. And they go, oh my God, my kid is shut down now. My kid is silent. Why? What's happening? You know, when children come into the classroom and the teacher's sitting there, and they notice this sudden change in the little boy that's just not interacting anymore. He seems to be in pain. His body seems to be hurting. We need to be asking these questions. Child's not in school for a while. Child suddenly wearing long pants. Why? Are they hiding marks? Not that we want everyone to suddenly go into ridiculous mode, of course, but there is a knowing, an innate knowing in us, isn't there? Our intuition. When you were a little girl and you went through what you went through, how easy was it for you, if at all, to sense a bad adult?
Every adult around me felt bad because it's probably easy to ask, how could I sense a good adult? Because, to be honest, those that were tasked for caring for me and raising me, or that were involved in my life, were either narcissists or psychopaths or predators. So I didn't really spend time with good adults. And my only safe adults I felt were at school. And that's when I could relax, because I wasn't being hunted all the time. You got to think, Dani, it was like I was an animal. I was just hunted down and trapped and targeted, and people would lay in wait. Are you getting that feeling? And so school was safe because no one was there to abuse me. And so I was out of control. And that's what I mean when I say to amazing parents and teachers and caregivers watching, start to notice the behavior. Don't listen to what a child says. A child will give you what you want to hear. But notice the behavior, because they can't fake that. If I'd been able to do this at school, and one teacher or one adult had picked up on it, I could have been saved. Can you imagine that?
It's unbelievable. Now, can you please show the sign again several times and tell people that don't know what that is and how much we must teach our children and adults and parents? The whole world must know this sign.
Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing it last time I released this. It's a universal sign for help. I repurposed it in June this year on our Global Awareness Day. Hand up, thumb across, closed fist. It's that. And I repurposed it for children under 16s to show if they're being abused or not safe. And Dani, this will get you. I've had 3 different people across the world send me an image or a video of a child using that. That's 3 children saved.
Oh my God. There you go. There you go.
That is saving children. People are seeing it. Kids are doing it out of cars, car windows. They're doing it when they're walking along a street. So I think it's nothing but if we can start to use this. And then I get parents or people who say, but what do I do with that? Okay, if you don't know what to do with it, bring the police or take a photo of the car plate or grab the first adult you see and say, can you help me with this? Or do something. Don't start quizzing the child. Do what you can to get that child away if you can't, start taking photos and images with your phone as soon as you can. Get some help.
Absolutely.
We have power. Children have no power. So I think that's really, really powerful. That global hand sign is on my YouTube channel, Handing the Shame Back. It's on the website. I put it across all social media. But really, I was quite surprised that in my home country, it's not up on billboards. Danny, this should be on every bridge, significant bridge in the world. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Can you imagine how many kids might then feel? Because see, then they're not telling anyone what happened, are they? They're just doing that. No one said they can't use their hand. No one said they can't draw a picture. There's so many tips and tricks in that book's jam-packed. And the reason we need to do this is because it's time. And as you know, Dani, I can talk about what happened to me forever, but it's time for me to come full circle. Yes, I've told my story in that first book. Yes, I've been able to support adult survivors in the second, and now I'm into prevention. Let's prevent this happening again. Ask any survivor, what do we always say? I never want another child to go through what I did. So please, keeping kids safe, use it. Use it.
Brilliant.
Let's save some kids. Stop talking about it. Do something.
Yeah, stop talking about it. Take some action. Do one small thing. Buy 10 books. Buy one book. Read it and then pass it on to somebody else. Whatever it takes. We would rather you bought books and put them into schools and libraries and hospital. You know, again, what can I do? What can I do? What's my mission? Well, Gloria Masters is on hers, and you can join her on her mission too. Gloria, it is always such an honor to speak to you. I am just so blown away by the work, by who you be, by your survival story and what you've done with things that you suffered, the pain, the violence, the trauma, that you've turned it around, and you are such a beacon of love. You truly are a beacon of love and light, and what can be from a torment of a child now who may be in an adult body not doing well because they're stuck and emotionally paralyzed in the past. So we give our love to you so much. We really do. Gloria, what would your final words be today in this broadcast? And also, please hold the book up one more time and tell us how we can get it.
Ta-da. Deliberately chosen for attention. Look at me. That book's going to leap out, isn't it? Yeah, so look, I guess, what do I start? I'd like to end. Oh, you can get it at gloriamasters.com. It's actually in paperback, ebook, Kindle, and Audible. So, yeah.
Wow, so they can hear
People seem to like. Yes. So the quote I'd like to share, just to finish. Oh, and it is on Amazon. So if you're on this side of the world, it's cheaper to buy from my website, gloriamasters.com. Okay. Don't ignore what children do. Their behaviour is always telling you something.
Don't ignore what people do. Their behavior
What
is
children do.
Yeah, what children do. Their behavior is always telling you something. Great words, wise words. Gloria, darling, thank you. Thank you again. And at some point soon, I'll have a beautiful Kathy O'Brien back on, and you with her. And we'll have another tete-a-tete and share and deliver as you two ladies do. And I'm so grateful to you, Gloria Masters. And again, guys, please get her on your channel, promote her work, buy her book. Is there anything more important at this time than the child healing, the inner child healing in us, and also to protect and help our children and re-educate the governing bodies that pervade over them? I think not. I think not. So to you guys out there, thank you. I hope that you have received a lot from this broadcast. That's always our intention. And I send you my love, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Dani.